Today, the United States is designating North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. Should have happened a long time ago, should have happened years ago. In addition to threatening the world by nuclear devastation, North Korea has repeatedly supported acts of international terrorism, including assassinations on foreign soil.
That was the president following his historic 12-day trip to Asia. The president declared North Korea a state sponsor of terrorism, called on the rogue nation to end its unlawful nuclear missile development. Author and journalist Gordon Chang says North Korea could have nuclear capabilities to hit the United States within 9 months. He joins me right now. Good to see you, Gordon. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Why didn't it happen sooner than when the president deemed them a terrorist organization? I mean, a terrorist state sponsor.
There's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah.
There's a very complicated definition of terrorism for purposes of this list. State Department needed to work through that, and they just picked a time when they could also talk to Japan, South Korea, China, all the countries in the region, sort of laying the groundwork on the president's 12-day trip. So that's why it happened after the trip, not during the trip.
So tell me what the implications of this are. Declaring them a state sponsor of terrorism means what in a practical manner?
Well, there are a handful of sanctions that come into play when a nation is put onto the list. And, you know, a lot of these measures are not important in and of themselves, and some actually duplicate sanctions that are already in place. But the important thing here is that the president has a long and consistent campaign to cut off the flow of money to North Korea. This just adds to the pressure. Also, it adds to the pressure of the sanctions that were put in place by Treasury this past week. So this is important. We're starting to see that they're having an effect in North Korea. So, for instance, junior officials in Pyongyang, part of the regime's favored class, are not getting their rations from the special distribution channels, at least according to anecdotal reports. But all the anecdotal reports are in the same direction, that the regime is running out of cash. We're not there yet, of course. It's going to take several months. But the Trump's campaign to cut off the flow, that's actually working now.
I see. So the president seemed to have a good trip. He came home talking about $250 billion in new deals between Chinese and American companies when he was in Beijing. How would you characterize the president's trip?
Well, the trip was really good because he reassured allies, and he corralled two very difficult friends of ours, President Moon Jae-in in South Korea and Rodrigo Duterte, the Philippine president. They're our allies, but they were moving in directions we didn't like. In Beijing, he sort of wilted in terms of the public comments he had, but behind the scenes, American policy was very resolute. We told the Chinese where to get off on a number of issues, including arms sale to Taiwan, and actually Chinese agents operating on U.S. soil. We told them to stop it. That's a very good thing because they've been here a long time, been doing a lot of things which are just inconsistent and actually a violation of American sovereignty. So the president's trip was really good, laid the groundwork for some important things that have to go on. You know, what goes on now is really difficult. He laid the groundwork.
I'm wondering what the sanctions mean, though, really, because somebody mentioned to me the other day, look, who cares about sanctions against North Korea? North Korea's leader does not care about his people. So what does he care that he's getting sanctions? Well, are they effective? Do they work?
Well, they will work if the president continues putting pressure on North Korea's backers, like Russia and China. And it's not just Russia and China. It's countries in Africa and around the region that are actually supplying money to North Koreans through various means. And the president has worked very hard to do that, to stop that. And so this is going to be important. It's not very sexy, but it's a very sort of ground and pound game. You go to all these countries, you get them to close consulates, embassies, you get them to not import North Korean labor and to make sure that they don't sell certain items to the North Koreans. It's Treasury and Justice Department have a lot of work for them to do.
The president uses tough talk to make a standpoint and make a move. Is that working? I mean, what I'm visualizing right now is the enormous armada that we have off of the Korean peninsula sitting there. I'm sure China doesn't like it. Obviously, North Korea doesn't like it. But it's basically sending a message. We are ready should you make a mistake, North Korea. Is that right?
Yes. Well, we have 3 carrier groups near the Korean peninsula. 3 carrier groups is important because with 2, you cannot conduct round-the-clock operations. With 3, you can. Now, the only issue there is some of those carriers have been on deployment for quite some time and are going to have to be withdrawn. But what it does is sends a message that we are prepared to strike if necessary. Now, I think the president's pressure campaign will work over time. It'll take maybe 9 months to a year to do that. But, you know, Basically, what he's saying is that all the tools in the American toolbox will be brought to bear against North Korea. And for the first time, we've got a president who is willing to use all these elements of national power against not only the North Koreans, but their supporters and backers around the world.
You're right. So do you think North Korea has shown any evidence that it's actually backing down in any way yet?
Not really.
Hard to say.
You know, people say, for instance, they haven't launched a missile since September 15th.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. The Chinese, I think, stopped them from doing that because in the run-up to the Communist Party's 19th National Congress, Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, demanded absolute calm because he wanted to consolidate his position, didn't want anything to interfere with that. So I think that they told the North Koreans, thou shalt not. And also right now, the North Korean military is preparing for its winter training cycle. They don't launch missiles this time of year.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's a combination of things why North Korea has been so quiet in the last several months. The real test will be February when they really start up sending off missiles into space again.
Oh, okay. So we will be watching that. Gordon, good to see you.
Thanks, Maria.
Thanks so much for joining us. Gordon Chang is the author of Nuclear Showdown. North Korea Takes on the World. We'll see you soon, Gordon.